Anachari Jayo Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jayo Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari
A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Sikho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivas Adigaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinatha Shai Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Mathura Dham Ki Jai. Jagannath Puri Ki Jai. Ganga Mai Ki Jai, Jamuna Mai Ki Jai, Tulsi Maharani Ki Jai, Bhakti Devi Ki Jai, Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Shri Guru and Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Today is a very auspicious day. By the Vedic calendar, this is the day that Srila Prabhupada departed from Bharatvarsha to Markine, that means America in Bengali, when he finally completed all of his assignments here to prepare himself. And on the way, he wrote a very important poem, Markine Bhagavad Dharma. And in that poem, he mentioned some Srimad Bhagavatam slokas. So we'll be chanting one of those slokas now before the class begins. This is Canto 1, Chapter 2, Text 17. Shinvatam Svakatha Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana Ridyanta Stoya Bhadrani Vidunoti Suritsatam Shinvatam Svakatha Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana Ridyanta Stoya Bhadrani Vidunoti Suritsatam Shinvatam Svakatha Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana Ridyanta Stoya Bhadrani Vidunoti Suritsatam. Mataji's? Srinvatam, those who have developed the urge to hear the message of. Svakataha, his own words. Krishna, the personality of Godhead. Punya, virtues. Shravana, hearing. Kirtana, chanting. Hridi antastaha, within one's heart. He, certainly. Abhadrani, desire to enjoy matter. Vidunoti, cleanses. Surit, benefactor. Satam, of the truthful. Translation. Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, who is the Paramatma, Supersoul, in everyone's heart, and the benefactor of the truthful devotee, cleanses desire for material enjoyment from the heart of the devotee who has developed the urge to hear his messages, which are in themselves virtuous when properly heard and chanted. We can repeat together. Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, who is the Paramatma Supersoul, in everyone's heart, and the benefactor of the truthful devotee, cleanses desire for material enjoyment from the heart of the devotee, who has developed the urge to hear his messages, which are in themselves virtuous when properly heard and chanted. Purport. Messages of the personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, are none different from him. Whenever, therefore, offenseless hearing and glorification of God are undertaken, it is to be understood that Lord Krishna is present there in the form of transcendental sound, which is as powerful as the Lord personally. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, in his Sikshastaka, declares clearly that the holy name of the Lord has all the potencies of the Lord, and that he has endowed his innumerable names with the same potency. There is no rigid fixture of time, and anyone can chant the holy name with attention and reverence at his convenience. The Lord is so kind to us that he can be present before us personally in the form of the transcendental sound, but unfortunately, we have no taste for hearing and glorifying the Lord's name and activities. We have already discussed developing a taste for hearing and chanting the holy sound. It is done through the medium of to the pure devotee of the Lord. The Lord is reciprocally respondent to his devotees. When he sees that a devotee is completely sincere in getting admittance to the transcendental service of the Lord, and has thus become eager to hear about him, The Lord acts from within the devotee in such a way that the devotee may easily go back to him. The Lord is more anxious to take us back into his kingdom than we can desire. Most of us do not desire at all to go back to Godhead. Only a very few men want to go back to Godhead. But anyone who desires to go back to Godhead, Sri Krishna helps him in all respects. One cannot enter into the kingdom of God unless one is perfectly cleared of all sins. The material sins are products of our desires to lord it over material nature. It is very difficult to get rid of such desires. Women and wealth are very difficult problems for the devotee making progress on the path back to Godhead. Many stalwarts in the devotional line fell victim to these allurements and thus retreated from the path of liberation. But when one is helped by the Lord himself, the whole process becomes as easy as anything by the divine grace of the Lord. To become restless in the contact of women and wealth is not an astonishment, because every living being is associated with such things from remote time, practically immemorial. And it takes time to recover from this foreign nature. But if one is engaged in hearing the glories of the Lord, gradually he realizes his real position. By the grace of God, such a devotee gets sufficient strength to defend himself from the state of disturbances, and gradually all disturbing elements are eliminated from his mind. Om Ajnane Timirandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chakshurunmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantekam Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prashtaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhaktivedanta Swamini Tinamine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavari Paschatya Deshatharine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivas Arigaur Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So on this most auspicious day, the day that Srila Prabhupada alighted from India and began his 37-day journey by boat, by cargo ship, steamship, from Calcutta to New York City. Nowadays, if we go to America, it takes anywhere from 12 to 15 hours. We just go to Delhi, jump on the plane, and we're there the same day. Srila Prabhupada, he was a sannyasi. He had nothing. He had renounced the entire world, his family, his business. He had no money. He only had the instructions of his spiritual master. So we'll hear now how he was inspired to carry out those instructions. In 1882, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he wrote a very long article about the importance of spreading Lord Chaitanya's mission throughout the world. And one of those slokas, or paragraphs, said, "When in England, France, Russia, Prussia, and America, all fortunate persons, by taking up kols, that's mridangas, and kartals, will take the name of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu again and again in their own countries and raise the waves of Sankirtan. When will that day come?" So by the inspiration of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu stating that his name will be heard all over the world in every town and village, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, in this present age, he decided to make this a fact, and he began by sending literature all over the world about Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's teachings. Then he prayed for an assistant, and Sri Krishna sent a ray of Vishnu, his son, the seventh son, Bimal Prasad, who later became Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Thakur. As Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was preparing to leave this world, somewhat in despondency because his entire mission had not yet been fulfilled, he had a last meeting with thousands of disciples and followers in Champahati in 1936, and he made a prediction. However long in the future it may be, one of my disciples will cross the ocean and bring back the entire world. So when Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was saying this, he was looking across the audience who was listening to him. And one of Prabhupada's godbrothers noted that Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati's glance came upon Abhay Charnaravinda Das. And that is Srila Prabhupada for us today. 2 weeks before Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur left this world, Prabhupada was feeling quite despondent that I spent my life raising my family, doing my duties. I could not enter into your circle of sannyasis and preachers, but I know that there must be something that I can do to serve you. So he wrote and asked Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur what he could do to assist him and serve him. And this was his reply, translated into English. I am fully confident that you can explain in English our thoughts and arguments to the people who are not conversant with the languages of other members. This will do much good to yourself as well as your audience. I have every hope that you can turn yourself into a very good English preacher if you serve the mission to inculcate the novel impression to the people in general and philosophers of modern age and religiosity. So Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, he was prolific in his writing and printing, which he had learned from his father. In his logo of the Gaudiya mission, along with kartals, deity worship, there was a printing press. And he used to print in many different languages, in Bengali, Odia, Assamese, Hindi, and also in English. And Srila Prabhupada, he would contribute to the English writings that Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati was printing. So already, his Guru Maharaj knew of his proficiency in the English language. Srila Prabhupada made this instruction his life and soul, and from the time that Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati left this world, which is January 1st, 1937, up until the time when he finally did leave India, he prepared himself. He laid the foundation for preaching in the Western countries. He began by publishing the Back to Godhead magazine. That was started in 1944, and despite the Second World War going on with the shortage of paper, he used to get consignments from the government for printing the Back to Godhead magazine. It was only a 4-page, that means 1 page, folded in half, where he would give his comments on the civil and the world activities going on, along with his translations of the works of the 6 Goswamis. Then, after finishing 3 volumes of Srimad Bhagavatam, he decided it was time to begin his journey. At that time, while he was traveling here in North India, he was invited to preach in Agra, because after he took sannyas, his Guru Maharaj, his godbrother, he instructed him that he could now travel and preach. So he was lecturing in Agra one day, and one businessman, Mr. Agarwal, when he heard that Prabhupada wanted to travel and preach and spread the glories of Lord Chaitanya, he offered to give sponsorship through his son, who was living in America, in a place called Pennsylvania. He was an engineer. And without Prabhupada's knowing it, he actually wrote to his son and asked him to sponsor Srila Prabhupada in America. It was very difficult to get out of India in those days. So as Srila Prabhupada was making his plans to leave, of course we all know in order to leave from one country to the next, you need particular documents. You need a passport, you need a visa, and in those days, because India was considered a third world country, you also needed a sponsor in the country where you were going. That's because India would not allow any money to go out of the country. They were a developing country, having just soon after been released from colonialism. So you were allowed to take 40 rupees, which was the equivalent of, just as Prabhupada said, a few hours of spending in New York City. It wasn't worth anything. In fact, you couldn't even exchange it in America at that time. There was no exchange between America and India. So it was, he left with it, and he came back with it and used it for his taxi fare to get to Chippewa when he returned to India. Never even used it. You also needed what was called a P form. Just as we hear about all extortions from banks, how people take big debts and then they go to live in the Western countries and they never pay back the debts. So in those days they were much more careful. You needed a P form, a permission form, stating from the State Bank of India, which was the only bank then, that you had no debts. And for someone who had no money, no bank account, nothing, it was very difficult to get that P form, because who knew where the money was, how was he going to get to America if he had no money? So that was going to be the biggest hurdle for Srila Prabhupada. Now, as Prabhupada was traveling and preaching, he made relations in Bombay. In fact, Srila Prabhupada, he founded the Gaudiya Math mission in Bombay along with his godbrothers. They wanted him to be the temple president, but Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati refused. He said, no, he will do other things in the future. So while he was preaching in Bombay, he met Sumati Murarji, who was a very great devotee of Bal Gopal. And he used to go to her home in Juhu and speak from his Srimad Bhagavatams. She even sponsored the printing of one of the first three volumes for Srila Prabhupada. And he assumed that because she was the biggest magnet of the steamship lines in India and also known internationally, he felt that she could give him a free ticket on one of her cargo ships going to America. So he approached her, and at that time he was given from the Scindia Steamship office a little diary. And in that diary, we now have a very wonderful book called the Jaladuta Diary, where Prabhupada keeps daily reference of his progress of going to America. So these are some of the daily entries. Mr. Chokshi, he was the personal secretary of Sumati Murarji. So he was using Mr. Chokshi to convince Sumati Murarji to give him a ticket. But Mr. Chokshi himself was not convinced that Prabhupada should go to America. All of the staff thought that Prabhupada would die in America because he was so old, and it was so cold, and he had no money, and he had nowhere to live. So he wasn't a very good sponsor speaking to Sumati Morarji, and she refused. So afterwards, Srila Prabhupada, he began his mission anyway. He got his passport, and while he was in Delhi getting his passport, the Ministry of External Affairs contacted him that your sponsorship has arrived. And Prabhupada did not even know that Mr. Agarwal had asked Gopal Agarwal, his son, to sponsor him. So he had to go to the ministry and ask him, what is it? And they showed him that he now had a sponsor in America. So this was one of the steps forward. So then, Srila Prabhupada, he had to get a visa and his P form. This is Srila Prabhupada's first passport. He mentioned that his father's name is Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Of distinguishing marks on his body, he said tilak on forehead. He had no dependents, and his address was at Chippiwada because that was his Delhi office at the time. So Prabhupada was getting there. He was almost there. Then, because Mr. Chokshi was not successful intentionally to get a free ticket for Prabhupada, he demanded a personal audience with Sumati Morarji. Sumati Morarji, she said that, you know what my staff members say? They say that you will die there. So therefore I will not give you a ticket. And Srila Prabhupada, he assured her, do not worry, because Srila Prabhupada had the potency of the entire parampara in order for him to fulfill the orders of his spiritual master. She wanted him to stay in India and do something here, but Srila Prabhupada had already attempted that. He had registered the League of Devotees in Lucknow. He had made his first disciple, Sri Prabhakar Acharya, an Ayurvedic student in Jhansi. He had started in Bombay, Delhi, all over India actually, Lucknow, met with the government, had programs there, the governor, and he was making routes in India, but nobody was serious to become a full-time devotee of Sri Krishna at that time. So he was determined that I have to fulfill the order of my spiritual master. So he assured Sumati Morarji that you don't have to worry. Everything will be all right. So she gave him that ticket. There, Sumati Morarji, she would remember how Prabhupada would come, and as Prabhupada would go from central Delhi, he would travel to go to Juhu, and then he would walk to her house. Sumati Morarji's house was not far from where our Juhu temple is now. He would see a plot of land there, very beautiful plot of land with housing on it. So he envisioned that when I become established, I want to make a temple here on this Juhu land. And later, this was the very land that our Radharasi Bihari temple is now situated on. So it was by going to see Sumati Morarji and reading Srimad Bhagavatam to her that eventually we got our Juhu land and temple. So now, Srila Prabhupada, with the help of Mr. Chokshi and the backing of Scindia steamship lines, he was able to get his visa for 3 months. It was a tourist visa. Tourist visas can be extended, but only for another 3 months. And the sponsorship was just for 1 month that Mr. Agarwal sent. So Srila Prabhupada, he was going, but with no assurance that he would be able to make routes at that time in America. And each day as he would go out, because he had to collect money for his traveling, he would, next to Juhu, there's a section of Bombay called Andheri. And there, the Scindia steamship lines had their residential quarters for their officers. So Sumati Morarji gave Prabhupada one officer's room for him to stay. And the other officers there, they would note how he was struggling every day to get his visa, to get his P form, and he would start holding evening sessions with all of them, reading from Srimad Bhagavatam. And they would come and check with him, how did he do each day? And they would give him prasadam. So they were trying to help him there at the colony. Now, when finally, after much endeavor, Srila Prabhupada got his visa and then his P form, he decided that he would have the Scindia steamship lines print a little pamphlet called My Mission. And within that pamphlet, he had slokas from the Srimad Bhagavatam and the Sikshastakam. And that pamphlet he was using to distribute to get donations for his further printing and for his travels abroad. Now, the P form was the biggest hurdle for Prabhupada, being a sannyasi. And the clerk at the government office refused his P form. And Prabhupada became adamant that you let me see your superior. Sometimes we have to go to the top because the lower clerks will not cooperate with us. So Prabhupada went to the top, to Mr. Rao of the State Bank of India Revenue Division. And Mr. Rao, after meeting Srila Prabhupada, he assured him, I have decided that you do not have to worry. Swamiji, I passed your case. Don't worry. So now that Prabhupada had all of these preliminaries in hand, his passport, his visa, his P form, his ticket, now all of those things were in order now. Sumati Morarji, out of kindness, because she had been all over the world on her ships, she knew that Prabhupada would be facing severe cold and shortages of food in America. So she had Mr. Chokshi go out and buy him warm clothes and whatever else she felt that he needed for his trip. And it was those few belongings that Srila Prabhupada carried in his one little suitcase when he boarded the Jaladuta steamship. This is the little booklet that Srila Prabhupada had printed, and we have it also in Srila Prabhupada's house. You can see it there. Now, Srila Prabhupada was bringing ammunition with him, and that was 200 sets of his Srimad Bhagavatams. That means 600 books. It was several trunks. And the steamship was going to be boarding and loading, leaving from Calcutta. But he was in Bombay. So his books were transported to Cochin, because we'll see in Prabhupada's traveling, from Bombay they went to Sri Lanka. From Sri Lanka they went around the bottom of the Cape, and then they landed in Cochin. And in Cochin, Prabhupada was able to see his books being loaded on the ship. So when Prabhupada finally was given his ticket, he took he would travel, nowadays we travel 2-tier, 3-tier AC, sometimes even first class. Well, Srila Prabhupada traveled on the Janta Express. Have any of you ever traveled on the Janta Express? We all used to travel on Janta Express. Janta Express, I'll give you a little example of what it looks like. We have here someplace. Oh, I think, anyway. Janta Express is for the Jantas. It's for the common people. And you really have to struggle. It's a 3-day trip. 2 nights and 3 days from Bombay to Calcutta. You're starving, you're cramped in, and this is how Prabhupada traveled because he had no money. And he would go like that on the Dehradun Express, on the Janta Express, whatever was the cheapest way to travel. So finally, Srila Prabhupada, he reached Calcutta, and there in Calcutta, this is Prabhupada's ticket. It says here his full name is given, as on his passport, and in parentheses, complimentary ticket with food. So Sumati Morarji wanted to make sure that the captain of the ship was sympathetic to a vegetarian sannyasi. And Mr. Pandey and his wife, they developed a very loving and close relationship with Prabhupada while on this 37-day trip. In fact, later they said that they had never had such a peaceful trip across the Atlantic Ocean, and they attested that to Srila Prabhupada's presence. And Prabhupada confirmed it. We'll find out later why. So this is Prabhupada's ticket. And there, Srila Prabhupada, before he left for America, we know that Srila Prabhupada, he was renting 2 rooms in the Radha Damodar temple. In those days, the rent was 5 rupees per month. I don't know how many thousands of rupees it is now.
A lot.
A lot. We'll just say a lot. Even when we were serving there, all of a sudden, one day, out of the blue, from 5 rupees a month, the Goswami came and said, "We're raising your rent to 60 rupees a month." That's 5 times 6. They rented it in one day 12 times more. So Srila Prabhupada, he paid in advance for 5 months, from June to October, not expecting that he would be able to stay in America more than 6 months. He paid then 25 rupees, which was remitted to Gorchand, but you always had to have receipts, otherwise they would cancel your tenancy. So Prabhupada was very careful in his business dealings, even in those days, especially with the Radha Damodar temple. Although Prabhupada was born in Calcutta, grew up in Calcutta, married in Calcutta, had his children there, everything was Calcutta-based. When he now went to Calcutta this last time, he had nowhere to stay. He wasn't going to stay with his family. So what he did was, one of the people who he was lecturing to, they had a dharamshala. He stayed in that dharamshala. This is the Bangor dharamshala. And rather than connecting with his family again, he arranged, because when Prabhupada used to preach in UP, all over UP, he was invited by the governor to take part in a big program at Naimisharanya. Prabhupada was one of the main speakers. And at that time, he met a Bengali Kirtaniya, Shishir Bhattacharya. So they developed a friendship. So Prabhupada contacted Mr. Bhattacharya, and together they would go by taxi, by rented car, to households. And while Prabhupada was there for 2 weeks, he went to Calcutta 2 weeks before the ship was going to leave. Every day they would go out and have house programs. And Mr. Bhattacharya, he felt that this was a very amazing thing that Prabhupada was going to America to preach Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's teachings. So he took this, you'll see in Prabhupada's house this picture of Prabhupada. In those days, everything was done with not offset printing, it was done by typeset printing. So that one picture of Prabhupada that he used for his passport, he was taking that with a little write-up about Prabhupada going to America, and none of the main newspapers were interested. Finally, the Dainik Basumati printed one small article about Srila Prabhupada, and his leaving for America on the 13th of August. Now, before Srila Prabhupada left on the ship, he went to Mayapur to take the blessings of his spiritual master by visiting Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's Samadhi. And then, just one day on August 12th, before he was going to leave, he went to Shantipur to the temple of Acharya. Because when Prabhupada was a householder, later became Vanaprast and Sannyasi, he would often go to the temple of Advaita Acharya because that was where the preaching mission was started by the Panchatattva. And he would get inspiration meditating on how Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu inspired his followers to preach Krishna consciousness. So many years later, because Prabhupada would go very quietly and just sit in the temple, and he would chant japa all day, and sometimes the pujari noticed that Prabhupada would be crying. So there was no direct contact at that time, but on that day, the pujari noticed that Prabhupada had come after many years, because Prabhupada had been preaching in Delhi, West India, North India. And Prabhupada explained to the pujari that my Guru Maharaj has ordered me to preach in the Western countries. I'm leaving tomorrow. This is the place of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Advaita Acharya. You please give your blessings that my mission will be successful. Many years later, after the pujari had seen off Prabhupada that day, some devotees came to Advaita Acharya's, the same temple, and they gave the pujari a Back to Godhead magazine. And he saw in that magazine the picture of Srila Prabhupada, and he saw the address of the Mayapur temple. So he traveled all the way to Mayapur, and he told the devotees about how Prabhupada would come there regularly, how on the day before he was leaving, he asked for blessings. And that's how we know this entire history of Prabhupada with the pujari and the Advaita Acharya temple. Tomorrow I'm leaving Bharatvarsha on a ship. I have no place to turn. I don't know what will happen. I only know that my Gurudev has given me this order, and the personalities of this place have given me their mercy. Would you bestow your mercy upon me? So this was Srila Prabhupada's prayer to the pujari at that time. Now Prabhupada had been meditating what was the best way to get to New York. He was always planning for New York. He considered New York to be the most important city in the world, and within New York, Fifth Avenue to be the most important street in New York. We have here Tosan Krishna Prabhu, who was very instrumental in fulfilling Prabhupada's desire to have the Rath Yatra down Fifth Avenue when he was their temple president and Sankirtan leader. So Prabhupada would dream, he had plans, but Sri Krishna, understanding the purity of Srila Prabhupada, he made all of those dreams come true. And Srila Prabhupada, he would say that my spiritual master has sent all of you, that's all of you sitting here today, to assist me in carrying out his instructions and this mission. So Prabhupada, because he had no money, although there were planes coming and going to New York, he was now boarding the Jaladuta on Friday the 13th, which is considered inauspicious in the Western countries, but for us it's the most auspicious day when Prabhupada alighted upon the Jaladuta. Sumati Murarji had given him her own quarters on the ship, all first-class quarters, and Prabhupada was quite comfortable in those rooms. Srila Prabhupada, he mentions, this is all of this is coming from not just only small portion from the Lilamrita, because after the Lamrita was written, so much more information was given by Prabhupada after they transcribed all of his lectures and the memories. When they traveled, Satsvarup Maharaj had sent his assistants to interview people that had known Prabhupada before he went to America. And all of those memories enriched our understanding of Srila Prabhupada's struggles and his successes in coming to America. So though Prabhupada was probably the first Vaishnava sannyasi to step his lotus feet upon America, he was guaranteed success because he had the entire parampara behind him. And therefore now we have temples all over the world. In fact, now even in the Antarctica, Srila Prabhupada's Srimad Bhagavatams have been placed. So Srila Prabhupada began on the boat from Calcutta, from the pier, crossing, seeing the botanical gardens, going through, finally reaching the Bay of Bengal. Now, while inland, things were very peaceful on the ship. He couldn't even tell that he was on the ship. But as soon as he reached the Bay of Bengal, he started to feel quite uncomfortable after he got out of the Ganga Delta. So there, within the Bay of Bengal, and especially now in the months of August and September, October, the rainy season, there are cyclones in the Bay of Bengal. So Prabhupada saw for the first time the rages of the bay, of the ocean. The ocean is just a bay of the Indian Ocean. And he became seasick. Now seasickness, because the boat is always up and down according to the waves, sometimes very high waves, sometimes very low waves. So you lose your equilibrium. You become dizzy, you become nauseous, you can't eat, you lose your vitality because you can't eat. And Prabhupada was experiencing all of that now on the ship for the first time. And the captain and the other crew members were advising Prabhupada, you have to eat something solid. So what did Prabhupada have? He only brought with him a bag of chira, chipped rice. And he would have that soaked in water. And he was afraid to eat anything. Although he had complimentary food, he was afraid to eat anything in case it was not offerable. So it was very difficult for Prabhupada to eat anything solid, aside from the seasickness. So Prabhupada tolerated, and finally, he would go and during the daytime, he would speak to the officers in the captain's cabin. And he saw different charts. And one of the charts was the wave lengths, the wave heights. And he would note where their waves were. Some of the waves would be 2.5 times bigger. That means up to the ceiling of a human being. And he would see, according to their calculations, how big the waves were that they were tolerating on this ship. And they hadn't even reached the ocean yet, which has even bigger waves. So there was a cyclone, and Prabhupada had to tolerate that. There was fog. They had to make the fog sirens go, because the biggest danger in fog is there are many ships in the same place and they can't see each other. So with the fog horns, they're able to warn others that a ship is here, be careful. And then finally, on the 16th, that means after 3 days of tolerating this seasickness, they were coming along the shoreline of Tamil Nadu, and then they finally reached Sri Lanka. And they went around Sri Lanka to the capital, Colombo. And there, Prabhupada saw fishermen. He saw that artificially Sri Lanka had been separated from India, although the culture was practically the same. The people looked the same, although Prabhupada said they weren't as good looking. And then he finally, at Colombo, Prabhupada wanted to see the city, This is the port in Colombo, full of lights, very big port. So many ships from around the world alight there. And they had to wait outside to finally get a berth inside of the port. And then Prabhupada was taken by the captain to see the city of Colombo. The Scindia steamship, they had arranged a taxi for Prabhupada and the captain, and they saw that it was just like being in India again. They spoke slightly different language, but the people were the same, the cars were the same, the culture was the same. So he felt quite at home there. He said it was just like small bungalows that he would see in Madras or Pune, anywhere in India. And he noticed that the people were quite well-to-do because it was a maritime city. That means a lot of wealth was coming in and out of the city. Then they started from Lanka, they went around and they started for Cochin. And this is the Cochin port here. So they finally reached Cochin, but they could not enter because there was not a berth for the ship. And that day happened to be Sri Krishna Janmashtami. So Srila Prabhupada, he took advantage of the fact that the entire crew and officers and visitors were all locked on the ship on Janmashtami, and he arranged for a Janmashtami program. He cooked prasadam, and he gave a lecture and kirtan. He distributed his little book, My Mission, and that whole program was radioed to Sumati Morarji. And then the next day, very uneventfully, Srila Prabhupada didn't mention it to anyone, that was Srila Prabhupada's 70th birthday. And then they were allowed into the port. And Srila Prabhupada had some time there, so he went to visit the cities, Ernakulam, which is the capital, and Cochin. Cochin is the old city. Ernakulam is the developed for the capital with all of the courts and the national buildings. And he also went to see that whole area is made of little islands. So the steamship again arranged for Srila Prabhupada to take a tour of Cochin and Ernakulam, and he went across the bridges that the British had made, and then he went to the Subhash Bose Park. Subhash Bose was the hero of the Bengalis, according to the Bengali history, and now it's becoming more widespread. It was he who actually liberated India from the British by his national army. So they had a beautiful park in honor of him there in Cochin, and he was very happy to see that they were honoring Subhash Bose there, because, of course, Prabhupada, being previously a nationalist, he was one of the followers at that time when he was a young man. So from there, Srila Prabhupada saw that his books, his several trunks of books, were being loaded onto the ship. He had arranged a transporter to bring his trunks of books to Cochin, and then he saw them being loaded on the ship. So now he felt very much enlivened. He was going to be able to take his books to America. Then they started their trip across the Arabian Sea, and that was where Prabhupada had his biggest problems. This is where Prabhupada had his 2 heart attacks, where he felt that he was not going to make it. He writes in his diary that it was a very, beginning from today down, 7 days Prabhupada just wrote a line in his diary because he was too sick to even make entries. And then finally, after one night, Srila Prabhupada had a dream where Krishna came to him and showed him that he, along with all of the Dasavatars, were actually rowing the boat. And he should not fear that his mission would be accomplished because Sri Krishna was with him on the boat. So after that experience, seeing that Krishna had given him assurance, Srila Prabhupada gradually recovered. I fasted continuously for 8 to 10 days. The pitta increased so much in my body, thus I suffered terribly from colic pain. So Srila Prabhupada was, after 2 heart attacks, one night after the other, he feared that if another came, he would certainly die, but Krishna protected him. And then they reached, finally, they went through the Suez Canal, and they reached Egypt, Port Said. And there in Port Said, the captain bought for Prabhupada a little kerosene stove. And then Prabhupada got different supplies there, and he was starting to cook for himself, which was very good for his recovery. He would make things like batti chachari, all the things that he liked to eat, and that way he regained his strength. So he was very grateful to the captain for assisting him in that way. Then going through the Mediterranean Sea, which was peaceful, there's an entrance to the Mediterranean, and there's Africa on one side and Europe on the other side, and there's this big rock called the Rock of Gibraltar. So Prabhupada, in his diary, he discussed how he passed through the Rock of Gibraltar, and then finally they entered the Atlantic Ocean. And while the Atlantic Ocean is one of the biggest oceans on this planet, Srila Prabhupada took solace of studying Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita in the Bengali. I'm sorry, we're a little late, but can I go on? Yes. So, Friday, September 10th, the ship is going very smoothly, and he's lamenting that he's no longer in Vrindavan, and at that time, he wrote a beautiful poem. Now, this book, later written after the poems were discovered, they were written and translated and printed by BBT. If you want to understand Srila Prabhupada's heart, because poetry is the expression of the heart, everyone should purchase this book and read Prabhupada's poetry. Study it very carefully. So Srila Prabhupada wrote his first poem, Markine Bhagavad Dharma, while he was going through the Atlantic Ocean. And at that time also, I have one little quote here. This is the poem in the Bengali. And I just took one little sloka from that poem. My dear friend, in your company I will experience great joy once again. In the early morning I will wander about the cowherd pastures and fields, running and frolicking in the many forests of Braja. I will roll on the ground in spiritual ecstasy. Oh, when will that day be mine? Today that remembrance of you came to me in a very nice way. Because I have a great longing, I called to you. I am your eternal servant, and therefore I desire your association so much. O Lord Krishna, except for you, there was no other means of success. So Srila Prabhupada, while meditating on his humongous mission, he was still taking shelter of Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita and the memories of Sri Krishna Leela. He also studied at that time the prayers of the Nagapatnis and the final prayer of submission of Kalyanag. So the Atlantic Ocean is very rough usually at this time. It's hurricane season. But the Pandays, they attested that because Srila Prabhupada was on the boat, they did not have any troubles whatsoever while crossing the Atlantic Ocean. Now we have here, the Prabhupada saw the islands that were controlled by Portugal, and then he saw the Bermuda Islands, and it's at this BDA section, Bermuda Islands. That is where the most difficult times usually occur for ships, but they had no problem whatsoever. So finally, from the Bermuda Islands, they were able to reach Boston, and at that time, Srila Prabhupada, he writes in his diary, this is our last slide, we shall certainly reach to America port safely. The whole day was clear sunshine, but at 4 p.m., the sky all of a sudden became foggy. The sun became dim, covered by foggy weather. The horizon is still visible. Let us see what is still ahead. The ship is stopped completely at about 6 p.m. on account of dense fog. Be Lord Krishna pleased to get out this fog. By the grace of Lord Krishna, the fog was cleared after 2 to 3 hours, and the ship started. The whole night was non-disturbing, and today, on the 36th day of our journey, we reached safely at Boston Port at 5:30 a.m. So we'll be celebrating that day of Prabhupada's arrival this year on September 14th, and we'll hear of Srila Prabhupada's further adventures while preaching Krishna consciousness. Hare Krishna. Jai. Okay. That's all. Anyone have questions?
So what was the first thing Prabhupada said when he arrived in Boston?
The first, we'll find out on September 14th. Stay tuned. He wrote another poem. You have to read that poem. That's what he said. Ugristan.
Why don't you give us a preview?
Preview, okay, of that poem?
Yeah.
All right, 177.
I mean, it's all connected, so, you know.
Yes, of course.
I want to know his mood when we arrive there. We can redo it again next time. Give us a preview.
Okay. So Markine Bhagavad Dharma, that's while he was in the Atlantic. No, I don't have it here. All right. Okay. O Lord, what should I do to help them understand this transcendental message of the Bhagavatam? I need your merciful benediction to persuade them, for I am very unfortunate, unqualified, and the most fallen. I have no power to do so on my own. In spite of my shortcomings, O Lord, you have somehow brought me to this country just to speak about you. Now it is up to you, O Lord, to make me a success or failure, as you like. O spiritual master of all the worlds, only you have the power to enhance my words, and thereby make me suitable for everyone's understanding. Only when you bestow your causeless mercy upon me will my words become transcendently pure. By hearing these messages, all the people will certainly feel enlivened and thus be relieved of their miserable condition of life. If you have brought me here to dance, O Lord, then make me dance, make me dance. O Lord, make me dance as you like. Although I have no devotion nor any knowledge, still I have been inappropriately honored with the lofty title Bhaktivedanta. Now, if you like, O Lord, you can fulfill the real purport of that name. Okay?
Did everything like that really happen? It seems like it's impossible that what you say about Prabhupada, no, visa, no money, and heart attacks, and it's just like almost like you don't even see movies like that. How is it possible that it actually happened like that?
Well, it was so amazing that our godbrother, His Holiness Bhakti Chiru Swami, was able to make an 80-episode movie that's shown on national television here in India, prime time, where everyone in the whole country was able to see Srila Prabhupada's life from beginning to end and how he was able to accomplish that. And if you like, we can sell you a whole set of those DVDs.
Here's my treasure.
Maybe we should start showing those yeah, that'd be a nice thing to do.
You could probably do it upstairs in the museum, actually. It's a nice.
That's a perfect idea. Have it running continually.
People sit there and also
Yeah.
we got some candle popcorn too.
Yeah, we tried that, that didn't work.
It worked great. Everyone loved the popcorn.
No, we scrapped it, we got Moody instead.
No, we did popcorn again. You were maybe missed out. But
Maybe I missed
we
it.
did the popcorn. We definitely did the popcorn.
Okay, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna.
We had the regular popcorn, and we had the, what do you call it?
Caramel
We had
popcorn.
both.
Oh, I missed it.
I missed it.
Okay, I'll have to wait another 50 years, huh?
They had